Hello everyone and welcome to the Spirit Fresh Show, coming to you right from the Fitzgerald Art Studio in Nalia. On the show with me are the usual suspects, Tasha and Sibella, and myself, Ian Kagayi, of course. We are joined in a very special way by Mr. Kagayi, Ngobi, Peter. Mr. Peter, could you please tell us about yourself?
That's a long question. I can keep the basics.
Okay.
My name is Kagayi Ngobi. I am a poet, which means I write and perform and critique and teach and publish poetry.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, you very many things I can say. I'd like to know about you growing up. How did you grow up to be these very many things? I want to know about your childhood too, now.
Again, long story.
Okay.
But when I was growing up, it was never my intention to be a poet, actually. It was always my intention to be a lawyer.
Okay.
I was raised by both my parents are primary school teachers, and so the dream was always to work hard and get a good job and have a comfortable life.
Better yourself.
Yes, something like that. But like I said, both my parents were primary school teachers, and they were teaching English language, and so we always had so many books at home. We started only watching TV when I was 13. Okay. So before that, we were always just reading novels and books. Yeah. And my father had poetry collections as well at home. So that's how I came across them. Okay. And I started reading poetry and I don't know about others, but for me, words have a profound impact on me as an individual. Okay. And so when I started reading poems, probably I was 5 or 6 years old, there is a way they affected me. There are these particular poems that I read in this particular book my father had that I picked up, that up to today I still memorized. Like up to today I still know them.
Wow.
So when I went to high school, I realized that there was a subject called literature, and that in that subject you read novels and then they ask you questions. I was really excited because I imagine something that you've been doing at home for leisure, and then you go to school and you realize that, wait, they actually teach this stuff. In fact, I was really never interested in books, but I was always interested in literature. It's the one subject that I never missed. I always did the work on time. My friends were like, I was the guy who, if you want to know something in the novel, the teacher is coming to class in the 2 hours time. I was the guy you had to run to, I really loved literature. And so when I realized that it is actually examinable in senior 3 and senior 4, I started liking it. Now, strange thing is, the book that I had read while growing up, the poetry book, is the book that the teacher came to class with. So again, I was that student. If the teacher asked the poem on this page, my hand was already up and I already had the lines in my head. So everybody thought I was smart or brilliant, but no, it's just that I'd read them when I was still young. And then when I went to A-level, I also realized that it is a subject that I can opt for, and as one of my electives, I did history, economics, literature, and divinity.
Wow.
Again, I realized that they are teaching poetry, they are teaching novels, they are teaching plays. So I had this profound love. But then, even when we were growing up in high school, primary school, they used to tell us, if you're good at English, you're going to become a lawyer. And so it's a high school, the same thing. You're good at history, you're good at literature, you're going to be a lawyer. So it became that narrative that was always in my head. And so even when senior 6 came around, I was glad I had good grades. I applied to become a lawyer at Makerere University, and gladly I got there. That was always the dream until in 3rd year Makerere, that I meet a group. Like they were age mates and they loved poetry, which was very weird because you're not going to move around to find people, telling I like poetry
at
university. But the strange thing is that none of them was a student of literature.
Wow.
So they were either students of medicine or architecture or food science and law. Because they had been friends at high school and they liked poetry, but then they said on Sundays when you're hardly doing anything, can we meet from 3 up to 6 p.m. and we just talk poetry? The way, plot, cooking plot at campus. The plot was poetry.
Okay.
And I can tell you, at first I didn't join. Because when I was told about it, I was like, those are just girls and sitting there reading poems about flowers. Who is interested in that? That's what I thought. So, but eventually they invited me for a show they had at the National Theatre. I said, wait, these guys actually have shows. Then when I went for the show, that's when all my stereotypes were demystified. First, that poetry is for girls, because I actually realized there were more guys on stage. Secondly, that poetry is about just flowers and what. I realized that actually there were poems about culture, poems about politics, poems about identity, there was this poem that I really liked about this guy who had been dumped by this girl because she had chosen of a sugar daddy. And I realized, wait, these guys are creating content about our daily lives. Yes. This is amazing. This is awesome. I told myself, the next time they're having a show, I must be on stage. That was 6 months later. So after the show, I got a contact of this young friend of mine, and she had always been telling me, Peter, come and join us. I got her contact now. I called her and I told her, when are you meeting next? And then I joined. But even before I joined the group, when I was at campus, when I was in first year, second year, I joined the group in third year. That's it. My fascination again, this thing that's like private fascinations, our private interests, like the things that you don't share with your friends. Yes. I used to go to Chambogo. I grew up in Chambogo. So we used to go to Chambogo University Library with my young brother. It was in form 5, form 6 there when we were still there. And our task was, let's go and look for the coolest poems ever. We had this particular book at home. It was called The Top 10 of Everything. And it had this particular section for literature. And so it had the top 10 most popular poems in English language. So we gave ourselves the task and we said, let's go and look for all these top 10 poems. Because there was just this one particular poem we liked, and we said, if we like this particular poem, imagine how the rest are. But now you can imagine, in the process of looking for the 10 poems, we ended up coming across 20 poems, 100 poems. I started coming across poets that I didn't know even ever existed, but their words were magical. You write. I mean, there was a guy called Wilfred Owen. He died when he was 33 years old, and so his poems were published after he had passed on. And he was writing about the First World War in a way that I had never experienced before. Like, you read poetry that takes you to these moments where you feel
that's passion,
right? Talking to you. So we really love. So, but then these were private fascinations. So even when I joined my friends in the poetry club at university, they were also shocked because the asking was, where did this guy come from? Finally, I had met a place where it was okay to be weird. It was okay to speak using big words. Yeah. It was okay to talk about poetry in a way that, guys, even thinking about it, I'm still emotional.
Okay, so
so much of it had been bottled inside, and so you walk into this place and everyone is an artist. So you're going to critique. We would have conversations for 6 hours, talking poetry with my friends. So it felt like I had met a new family. Yeah. But then, to make the story short, campus had to end.
Yes.
And so I had to make up the decision.
Yeah.
No, well, gladly, if you ask me. Yeah. Okay. But then we had to make that decision where, now I had to face the reality. There is the reality.
Yes.
There is the degree
degree.
There is the degree that is going to take you to this job, white collar job, and then there is this passion. You really don't know what to do with it. Because honestly, I don't know how many professional poets do you know. You see, that's the point. Like even ourselves when we were growing up, we used to think all poets are dead. Like we used to think these are things done by old people.
Shakespeare.
That's the thing. So there is no precedent. There is nothing someone is going to look up to and be like, that's a career that I want to do. Because there are no examples. It's not there. Yes. But then it's something that I wanted. So I went to LDC, but then I kept on writing and performing poetry. But then it was at LDC that I created. I figured one of the ways that we need to make poetry popular, because we figured if we're going to make it a career, it had to become popular. We had to create a market that was going to consume it. Now, where do you start? Go to schools, because the one thing that we kept on telling ourselves when we were still poets was our teachers were very bad teachers. You could not have had a student like me, and you don't introduce me to poetry as a profession, or as writing as a profession. Because remember, they were just telling us, go and become a lawyer, go and become a lawyer, go and become a lawyer. They're not telling you can use your literature. You can take it. You can take it into media. You can take it into writing. You can take it into copywriting.
Politics.
You can take it. Everything. You can take it anywhere. So it was only this linear, singular perspective they gave us, that if you're good at English, you're good at literature, you can only become a lawyer. So we said no. We need to go and offer an alternative reality to the students themselves. So that's how I became a teacher at Nabi Sunsa, and I was actually working for free.
Wow.
And when we started the idea,
so it was pro bono, I'm thinking.
Yes, certainly. But when we started rolling out, we discovered there was so much talent, so much interest in literature, in poetry, that for me to go back and finish LDC was going to be criminal. It was going to be more disillusioning for the students to come and tell them, look here, poetry is good, it's an art, you can live by it. And then you go and become a lawyer.
Study law.
Precisely. So I had to stay, and of course that was a huge challenge, because my parents had to live with the situation. But I tried to cope with the situation, because the truth is there is no money in these things. So what is it there? What is it in there that someone who is interested in their passion should look out for? For me, I always tell people that money is a mode of transaction. It comes and it goes in large sums, in small sums. What is more important is to ask ourselves, what legacy are we leaving behind? How are we going to make our society better as ourselves? If you're going to sit back and complain about the poor education system, the what, but what are we doing as individuals, as human beings, to make sure that we can make the situation better for everyone? So that's how I stuck out, and I said, you know what, I have to make this thing work by hook or crook. I have to find a way of making sure that literature and poetry turns into a career, and it can feed me, it can give me a comfortable, like the same life that I would have wished for a lawyer who is successful. I can wish it for myself as a poet.
Talking about poetry, who is your mentor in poetry? Because I'm sure there are so many poets out there.
The truth is, there are many. My first mentor was my younger brother.
Wow.
Yeah, because he's actually the one who introduced me to liking poetry just beyond what the teacher is teaching me in class. And then for us, we call ourselves self-made writers. We have had to mentor ourselves as a collective. So even my peers, the ones that we used to write with at university, and then
I guess you had to mentor each other, because there was nobody like mentor you who had taken that path.
Yes, and it's actually one of the things that, even now growing up as a teacher, it's one of the things that I am so focused on. Mentorship. For us, when we were starting out, we had nobody to give us the direction and what. So we had to find a way of making it work for ourselves. But again, we don't want others to go through the same hassle that we have to go through. So now we mentor each other, we mentor young people. But now also, there are established writers and poets in this country, on this continent. So, for example, there is a lady, Jennifer Manasubu Gamakumbi. I don't know if you've heard of her. She wrote a novel called Chintu that was published about 2-3 years ago, and this year she won a prestigious award that gave her 600 million shillings.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's but in writing, literature, you see, so there is money actually. So she's always in constant contact with us. And
is she Ugandan?
She's Ugandan. Jennifer Nansubu Gamakumbi. She teaches at Lancaster University, but yes, that's the thing. Even now, those narratives are there.
That's what's out there.
But yes, there are, and there are actually Ugandans who are making it work. But even then, not just Uganda. Look at Africa. There is a writer in Cameroon. She's called Imbolo Mbiu. She wrote a novel that got her and she got a $1 million contract for that novel when she was in Cameroon.
Wow.
You see, in Nigeria, there are writers who are making such a killing. In Kenya here, it's the same thing. So it is working. I mean, Wasan Shire, last year's Beyonce's album, featured her poetry.
Wow.
And when you look at her credits, she's credited as the video editor and the contributor. So you can see that there are ways that our literature can inspire the world and take us places. Yes.
Interesting. Interesting.
So what has your journey been when considering you just left campus and you just started a new project, poetry, which is not easy? So I would say, what are your challenges? Was it smooth? Was it rough when you started doing poetry?
It was very rough.
Wow.
The smoothness comes from the passion that you know I'm doing something, and I may not be the one who's going to benefit from it, but you can see how it changes people's lives. Literally, words have the power to kill.
Oh, yeah.
Words have the power to heal. Words have the power to grow. Words can nurture things. So as a poet, I know the power that I hold. But now the challenges are there. Now one of them is that, like I said, mentorship is a very big problem. Because when you don't have a mentor, it is not easy for you to project where you can take it.
True.
Now for me, like I said, I know someone who has made $1 million from the manuscript they wrote from their home. I have friends who write manuscripts and they are paid 25 million shillings per episode. You see, and they're in Uganda here. So there are those examples that when you look out front, this is possible. It also gives you courage to work. Yep. Then secondly, we have a huge problem of space, infrastructure space, as performers, as artists. So for example, if it is beyond La Bonita and National Theatre and the Indere Center, where else are you going to take your show? And you feel it is a theatrical show. So we find that we are living in a space where we have to re-improvise and redefine what space is. And then the other challenge is resources, financial resources are not there. If you look at, say, for example, in countries in Nigeria, and South Africa and Egypt, or North Africa, where their economies are a bit stronger, you find that the government also invests in the creative industry. So artists there have an opportunity, to work, to showcase quality that can compete on a global scale. So you would find that there are poets who have tours that they are sold out for 6 months. Wow. You see, when you look at recently, I met a poet from Ghanaian born but lives in the UK now, called Nipax. Because of the opportunities that exist for him as a poet, he's the one who wrote that there's an advert for the Premier League. That a poetry ad that he wrote, and they were using poetry. There is George the poet, the Ugandan poet living in the UK. For the Monaco Grand Prix, hired him to do a poem for them. You see, so all these opportunities are existing in these environments because their societies have these structures which we do not have. And then of course government policies that do not look at that do not favor us as artists. Where we find we are equally competing as the Nigerians on the same footing in our own land. I know. So some of these are the challenges, but they are surmountable. That is the beautiful thing about it. For me, I look at every challenge as an opportunity to create more impact.
Make you stronger, make you go forward, make you go places.
So do you happen to have role models in your life?
Yes, quite a lot. I look up to a Ugandan poet called Okot Pabitek.
I know him.
Yes, I look up at him. He passed on in the 90s. Yeah, but for me, this guy was a Ugandan who wrote a poem called Song of Lawino, and it became so popular that a genre was named after him. Like in academic circles, there is a genre of poetry called the Okot Song School.
Wow.
You get like a Uganda. You can imagine that's a huge contribution that he made, and a strong legacy that up to date is one of the most popular works. If you're looking for an example of how literature can market a country on a global scale, Song of Lawino is a good example. And for me, I look up to him because what he achieved for us, I wish I can do the same for us as Uganda. I look up at Alex Mukulu. as well. He's a poet, playwright here, and in the 90s again, he used to make these shows that we hear of. And the National Theatre would be sold out for 30 days.
I know.
On the run, and every day he's having a show for 30 days, and the tickets just sold out.
Talking about Alex Mukulu, I think
they are so mythical. He even became a myth at a certain point. He became that popular and that larger than life.
I know.
And he's still making his productions. So I look up to him as well. I look up to my students a lot. My students, 13 years, 14 years, 15 years. For me, the younger generation inspires me a lot. The people you look up to, and I have a reason to wake up tomorrow. I have a reason to want to be alive tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Because when you look at what they write and how a child perceives the world in the most innocent and most real way. Yes, that's the word. I think they are the manifestation of sincerity. And so when you see what they can do and what they can produce, you want to be part of it.
True.
So for me, they really inspire me a lot. My friends as well that I keep working with, like I said, we keep on supporting each other.
Yeah.
We give each other emotional support, psychological support, spiritual support, even artistic support. So when I write a poem and I bring it to you and you help me edit it, or you help me critique it, now, like I said, now we also publish each other's works. So the process again is still a collective process. I have a manuscript, help me read through it, take it to that editor, take it to the proofreader, even the graphics designer is a fellow poet and a friend, and so the work comes out and it's like home food.
Okay.
Everyone has contributed something to it. And
you said something about graphics design.
Yes.
How does that come to do with poetry now?
It's visual art. If I'm going to have a book to come out, it's going to go through processes.
Okay.
So the first initial stage is that I have written a poem, or I've written this number of poems, and now I want them published. Okay. So the next step is to take them to an editor. So the editor goes through them, and then if there's any editing to do, it gets done. Then after that, you take them to a proofreader. Okay. And then the proofreader does the proofreading. Then after that, you give the work to the graphics designer. And this is where the graphics designer comes in. Those poems are supposed to have a book cover. Oh. And that book cover has to be the kind that absolutely represents what is inside the poem.
Yes.
We grew up being told to never judge books by their covers. But sincerely speaking, if you're going to walk into a bookshop, certainly, the book cover is for me. I always say, as a poet, the first poem is your book cover. It's the thing that gets me to open it. Yeah, so now that's where the graphics designer comes in. But then it also helps that the graphics designer has a background of poetry to know the thought process that the writer goes through, and then to appreciate, in the use of imagery, metaphor, color, the shades and everything. So that's, and then the graphics designer does the work, and then you give it to the cover, now the book designer, the person who's going to put everything together. Yeah. And of course, you don't forget to go to the government, because you have to get you already have it by virtue of the fact of being a creator.
The creator,
the law recognizes you naturally, even if you don't register it.
Okay.
But it is smarter to register.
Oh.
Yeah. So you go to the Uganda Library, and you get, for 30,000, you get the international standard book number, and that's it. So every book can have the ISBN, as we call it. There, you're good to go.
Okay.
So what message do you have for people out there, who want to become poets, who want to achieve their dreams, and they don't have they are maybe shy, or maybe they don't have, good mentors, resources?
Be a poet. I don't know, just be, stop wanting. Be. Someone's telling me, the language we speak eventually creates the monuments outside the world. So when you say, I want to be a poet, you'll never be, because you're just wanting. Say, I am a poet. So when you change your language, you also change the institutions that you build outside you.
Okay.
Yes. So what my message to them: be a poet. Just be, own up to it, and know that God gave you purpose.
Get a pen and paper.
You don't even have to. You can just freestyle. Okay. That's also poetry. Just know that you have purpose. You have a message within you. Writers and poets are very, very special people. We are unique. In our veins runs history of generations and DNA. So the words we speak are we are speaking for a community. You have to remember that you're not just you. Your responsibility belongs to the world, and that's whatever you create, whatever you speak is not. Don't take it for granted. Don't take it for granted. Realize that you are special, and God has chosen you to be His representative on earth. And yes, put that talent to use.
Interesting. We are going to take a short break. We are still chilling with the Kagayi Peter, a poet, critic, lawyer, teacher, and everything else. We'll be right back.